Welke, coming to you live with the Next Level Therapy Business Builder crew, Megan, Anthony, and Alicia. Welcome to our Next Level OTPTSLP podcast. We're excited for you guys to be joining us. If you're watching live, if you could put live in the comment section. If you're watching replay, if you could put replay in the comment section, that would be great. And we are going to go ahead and get started. And Anthony's going to lead us today with our Q&A and our questions. We've been getting some additional questions sent over, and we've been seeing some different things on Facebook groups. So we'll address a few of those today. Anthony?
Cool. So we've been getting this question a lot, and it comes up sometimes before people start or when they're looking to start. But it's, what is your opinion on business partnerships or starting your business with someone else? Anybody want to start there?
Okay, well, first of all, I will say that I am not a fan of partnerships, just because I think that if you have a great idea and you want to go all in, you should go all in and build your own business. But I also want to say that we have some amazing therapists that are business partners, and they're doing very well. So it takes the right mix of people to make a partnership really work, and it can work. So I don't want to sound like a negative Nelly by saying that, I'm not a big fan of business partnerships, but that's only because we have seen some business partnerships not go well and it end really ugly. But it can be a good thing. And we have several therapists that are business partners in our program. And I know, Megan, you work with quite a few of our businesses that are partners in our program. Thoughts that you want to share?
I think I'll first start with going backwards in my experience personally with partnership before a therapy business. And it taught me a lot about the progression. They were in business together for, I want to say, almost 20 years. But one thing with partnerships is if you're coming into it, family members, friends, those things, understanding that our lives are going to take different paths. Kara and I are going to take very different paths at different times in our life, and that we need to structure our business in a way that protects us from those changes. And how are we going to navigate that? So I almost feel like partnerships, yes, I agree with Kara. I really don't strongly advise them unless you've really put a lot of thought and effort into them, because we have to almost immediately treat that business as its own entity, which can be really hard when you're starting a business. Your policies and procedures need to address way more things. Like, what happens if Kara decides that she's going to take a month off? Well, when she works for herself, she can navigate that. But what does that look like to my partner? What does that look like to our payroll? And that stuff just gets messier. And I feel like that's where resentment and animosity can come in. And that's what breaks that partnership down. So am I a fan of them? I'm not per se. Yes, we have some very successful partnerships, not only in TBB, but in other places that I am aware of these partners occurring. But I will tell you that more often than not, it is the petty things that we don't think about on the front end that start to become massive things. Like, how come Alicia got to buy her kids new phones and put it through the business plan, but I don't have kids. So what am I supposed to do with that money? Why is Alicia taking 3 weeks off and I can barely get a day off, and yet she's still getting paid? So those are just some examples I feel like I've run into, and they ruin friendships. They ruin families. And I don't want to see that for people. So bringing two separate entities together sometimes is a better option. But I'm not going to say no to it. But I think you made a good point on some of that stuff. So,
yeah, and I'm on the same page. I'm not a fan either. I've seen a lot of them break up, and they're people who are close and they're friends and they have this great vision together, and then they end up separating and have to create their separate businesses starting from scratch again if they want to continue to work for themselves. I think people don't go in necessarily, they think of the big picture, right? This is this great plan, and they don't think of all those little details that Megan just mentioned. And so if you're not going through every little thing, and it's like a marriage. I mean, you are married to this person. It's a contract, just in your business, and so you have to see it that way and understand that you're going to have things to work through. It's a really good idea to get, premarital counseling, so to speak. To have somebody walk through some of that with you, because if you've never had a business, you don't know all the things that are going to come up. You don't know what questions to even ask. So that can be a really valuable thing to have somebody walk you through some of those, or do some research even to see, well, what are some questions that we may not be thinking of. So you're really going through all of it. But yes, they can definitely be successful, but if you are two different disciplines, especially, I think it's best to have two separate entities that come together and just like refer to each other, as opposed to partnering up.
Yeah, collaborate.
Yeah.
And I'll just chime in there. Not that I have experience in that domain so much, but I can say that when we were building our therapy practice, I wasn't an actual partner legally, but I was viewed as a partner and treated like one, truthfully, because I brought something different to the table, right? Like, I wasn't a therapist. And I think if I was a therapist, it would probably be a lot harder. It's like two different people pulling things two different directions. Eventually, it's like you said, some things just snap, and it can ruin friendships. It can ruin family if that's what it is. So you have to ask yourself a lot of these questions, like, what are you guys going to do when you disagree on something? What are you going to do if one person is contributing more than 50%, but you're both 50% on the partnership level? How are you going to handle that? Are you going to take it personally, right? Or are you going to get, are you going to have emotions about that too? So there's a lot that comes in there. It's not to say that they're not good. I think it works out well for us in our business here as Systems, because that's what we're at right now. We're a partnership, but we both do different things. We both cater to different people. I don't know what that would look like if we were both OTs or PTs trying to do the same thing and trying to build the business. It feels like in many ways it is, trying to go two different directions. It's just sometimes not possible in many ways. So,
well, I would just like to ask you, Anthony. I mean, you see
Mhm.
the back end working with therapists who are partners versus working with therapists who are the sole owner. Do you notice anything different when you're working with therapists that are business partners versus the other therapists from behind the scenes, systems wise?
I mean, not so much on paper there, let's say. I will say I kind of get inklings of things in conversations, right? One person has to just be really solely focused on the clinical side, and another person, they might be focusing a lot on operations, and they don't get to utilize their clinical side as much, right? And that can kind of, I don't know, that can create, I guess, tension, let's say, when that's the case. One person may feel like they're having to hold all the stress there and understand what's going on, versus the other person just doing what they love and doing what they were trained to do. I don't think it's really possible a lot of times to split those duties evenly. Like, it's just going to be a ebb and flow. That is one thing I've noticed is I wouldn't say that one person necessarily gets more bookings than the other, but I could see things happening from a stress and tension side of things where those, business things have to get done. And who's going to do them? Is that one person? Is it the other? Is it both of them? It could be hard to dilly up that, that work.
Yep. Yeah, for
So,
sure. I see a lot of our partners where one takes on more of the back end support, the other one's maybe more of the clinical support, marketing, things like that. It'd be
I
good
think
in the
I
future to
would,
bring some of our partners in and have them talk about their experience.
yeah. And
I think
it's
it's
not
a
to say that
mindset.
one
Okay.
person is more talented than the other either. Like, it's not that, well, I'm a better therapist, so I need to do more of the clinical side. I think it's more just sometimes there's not clear expectations between the two. right? And that can cause this sort of rolling under this tension underneath, right? So
Sorry, my phone just went off, everyone.
no worries.
Oh. I think it's a big mindset shift too, though, is you have to be grateful for that partner versus looking at them as not doing enough. And I think that's a huge component of it, is that running a business is extremely stressful. And we put that on ourselves as well. Like, we often, just as sole entrepreneurs, will say we don't do enough, right? We'll constantly be like, well, I could do more, I could do more. But when you have a partner, it's very natural to offload that on someone else. Like, we're not getting this done because Kara didn't do X, Y, and Z, even though what I should be saying is, gosh, I'm so glad I have Kara. She did X, Y, and Z today. She finished these tasks. And one thing I do see in partnerships that are successful is that gratefulness for each other. And when you talk to the partners individually or together, they're very thankful for, gosh, Kara's always organized and really helps me remember that I have to do these tasks. Megan's very attention oriented and looks at all these details. That is one thing that I noticed that makes them very successful from the foundation, is that they appreciate the help versus off-putting their stress on each other. So
Awesome. Good deal. Let's take a look here. Can you start a private practice if you're an OTA or PTA? And what should therapy assistants consider?
So,
And this, let's also say, this is not legal. We're not giving anybody legal advice either. Let's say
100%,
that.
100%, but 100% OTAs and PTAs can start their own private practice. I mean, my son can start his own business. Why can't an OTA and PTA start their own practice? But we hear it all the time that OTAs and PTAs don't think they can start a practice for some reason, or that someone told them. I mean, I've even had people email me that, like, in school they were told they couldn't start their own private practice. And then I taught OTAs for like 8 years, and I remember students having this discussion. Well, we can't start our own practice. So 100% you can start your own practice, but depending on the type of business or practice you want to start is going to depend on what you need to have in place as far as to meet your supervision guidelines, and practice act and all of that kind of stuff. But yes, you can start your own practice. Megan and Alicia, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say basically the same thing, but also just a word of caution for the people who might be an OTA or PTA and say, oh, I want to do this coaching thing or this tutoring thing or whatever that, I don't, it's basically the same, it's therapy, but they want their own business, but then they call it something else. And that you do have to be super careful about following that practice act. And just because you call it tutoring doesn't make it not therapy. You're just calling therapy by, tutoring instead. So I would just urge some caution with that as well.
And that brings into the discussion on even being able to ensure that type of practice. Mm-hmm. We had an OTA that was, had came to us about starting her business and told us her experience, that she was trying to start a private pay business doing more like aging in place, but not call it OT. And she couldn't get liability insurance to cover her because she was a licensed skilled professional. And I don't know the full details, but you got to think that there could be other things that could impact you, not just following like our OT standards of practice, ethics, and things like that. But if you can't get properly insured, that's a huge issue.
Right.
I disagree.
Thoughts on that?
No, I just agree. It is crazy to see. I like that Alicia brings that up, is because you have to make a decision sometimes if you're going to stay licensed and you're going to stay active as a provider, and you can't just, like she said, you can't just take it lightly either. I've had friends who have went into selling different products and they've had to leave the practice of OT because it just doesn't align. Not saying leave the practice, but I think she just makes a great point that absolutely PTAs, OTAs, you can start your own business. It's probably best, truthfully, I will put the tag in there, to get coaching on how that looks. What does that look like? If you're going to treat patients, what does that look like? Just some of those nuances in there, but absolutely you can have a practice and you don't have to have someone else start it for you to be successful with that.
And there's so many other businesses that, OTAs, PTAs, OTs, OTR, or PTs, SLPs can start that aren't necessarily clinical practice too. OTA here has started a non-medical home care company. I know another OTA that started a yoga business. There's a variety of different businesses that you could look at starting. It doesn't have to be a clinical providing OT services business.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things, now that you know that you can own a business, it only opens the door for more questions for these people too, right? I always have to think about what's the kind of reception or the journey that somebody's going on with you. So it becomes a question of, what do people actually need if you go out and build that? What problem are you solving? Who are you serving? What's your differentiator, right? Are you actually bringing something that people need in that area? Or are you just thinking, well, other people are doing it, so I can do it too? It's not as simple as just, you can do it, so go ahead and do it. It's kind of, there's a whole host of other questions that come along with that too.
Well, I think a major obstacle that we see for the therapists that we work with is finding, if you want to have that clinical practice, is finding the right OT or PT to work along with you, and how you're going to work that into your daily operations. Because staffing is hard to find. And then to find that person that is willing to, work alongside with you to make that work can be difficult at times, but it can be done.
And navigating the fact that they're like a supervisor to your clinical skills, but not to the business, and keeping those things in mind, and that you are still the boss. Like there's a lot of that to navigate and to consider, but you can do it totally.
All right, shifting gears a little bit, going a different direction, same vein, but a little bit further on. What do you need to have in place before hiring? Whether you're hiring an OTA, PTA, maybe you are an OTA and you need to bring on an OT or PT, what are some things that you'd need to have in place for your business before you go out and do that?
One thing I want to say there is that you should be the one who's thinking about the fact that you need an employee, and not some random person that's a therapist that thinks they want to work for you. Because that happens all the time, where people will be like, oh, you have such a cool business, I'd love to work for you. And then people go, oh, what do I need to do to make that happen? And they haven't gone through all the things that you need to have in place. So I just want to throw that out there, because that is so common. It's really common. And that's when people think of hiring, and think, no, don't do that. That is not the time.
A big one for me is you absolutely have to have a good solid foundation in place, and you have to know your numbers. Yeah. We see people wanting to hire because they have this massive wait list, yet do they really have that massive wait list? When we sit down and look at it, maybe what they're already doing, they don't have good systems in place. And by improving some of the systems and creating automations and getting some of their current staff full, they no longer have a wait list, right? Or that first hire, some people think they might need to hire a therapist when maybe their first hire would be better off as an admin person. But we don't know any of that until we sit down and look at all of the KPIs and have the numbers show us what you need. And if you don't have a good system, and Anthony, you can really speak to this, if you don't have a good system in place or how you're doing things, if you just add someone else to the mix in that chaos, it just amplifies that chaos. So yeah, I'd say solid foundation, and you have to know your numbers, and don't just rely on asking on Facebook, who should be my next hire? Should I have an independent contractor, employee, or an admin? no one, if someone gives you a specific answer, they're doing you justice, because we need to know exactly what's going on in your practice in order to give you the best advice for that.
And let me just say that, back to using that term chaos, I always loved using that term. Hiring's not going to solve that. If you feel like things are chaotic and you have too much going on and you need another body, hiring's not going to solve that. It's just not. It's going to only multiply what's either already working or what's not working, right? So if you can't say for certain that bringing somebody on today and you put them in that role, you have to ask yourself, if I put someone in that role, will they succeed today? And if the answer is no, then you're not ready, right? If you don't have if you feel like things are not working, things are chaotic, throwing somebody else in the mix is only going to make your life that much worse and that much harder, right? Whatever it is, systems,
Policies,
expectations, SOPs, all of that, policies.
Yeah.
You've got to have that foundation in place, like Kara said.
Yeah.
Without it, and systems are a part of that for sure.
Managing people takes a lot of time. Yeah.
There is that too.
Yeah.
I was just on a call before, and the therapist has gone through a few different VAs because she was saying it's just so difficult, and the training is hard, and trying to get the right person in, and so forth, and it can be really costly. Making that wrong hire costs you way more than you think, and making a good hire costs you a lot of money until they really get up and going too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like Kara nailed it. One, people don't review their numbers enough. So even if you look at a schedule and it looks full on your staff, then you actually start digging into cancellations, and you start digging into like all the things. You realize, like she said, your staff aren't actually full. Maybe you have a wait list of 3 or 4 versus 20 that you were going to fill someone's schedule with. I think Alicia, everyone just made a good point about onboarding. If you don't have a process for onboarding and you want to continue to be a practitioner and be a boss and be a leader, you can't do them both full time. And I think we see that a lot with people. They'll bring people on, and then it's kind of what I said before, they're putting the blame on someone else. And I'll tell you, the minute you decide to hire somebody, it's almost always your fault. And that stinks to hear, but it is. You didn't communicate enough. You didn't spell it out enough. You didn't check in enough. You didn't slow down enough. You felt overwhelmed. And just like having a partner, you hire someone and you're like, here you go. I'm going to dump this on you because I don't know how to handle my emotions of feeling overwhelmed. So I'm going to put it on you and then blame you when it doesn't go well. And that's brutal. But the truth is, you have to be able to say, I got to take feedback. I got to check in often. And like Alicia said, it takes a lot of time. I'm onboarding probably 4 people this month, and I'm actually scared of it because that's a lot of time, and we got to have a plan around it so that we don't drop the ball on them and then they become a bad employee, because like Kara said, it costs a lot of money to get them in the door. So I think before hiring, you really got to have your systems in place, but have your mindset in place too, that it gets a little lonelier actually hiring someone because you have to rely on checking yourself every day. Am I doing what I need to be doing for that person? And that's a hard mirror to look in sometimes.
Yep. Agreed. Okay, so to wrap things up, most therapists think that when they start a business, it needs to be a traditional practice. But let's talk about and discuss what are some other things they can do besides a traditional practice, or other services that are kind of tangential or synchronous to what they're already doing in the practice.
Well, I'm a pediatric therapist. There's always parent coaching, but I will say that's really also very hard to market. It's a little bit of a different thing. So a lot of the things we might do that are different than a traditional practice still require a lot of marketing, and maybe different marketing than what a traditional practice would have. So I'll just say that. But then, like in pediatrics, actually, or adult, there's things like the Safe and Sound protocol that can add a little bit more to what you do. So it depends if you're trying to add something to a practice or do something completely different. There's a lot of other options out there as well. I'm sure you all have better ideas.
I mean, when I was just speaking to a group of OTA students recently, and I always like to encourage therapists, at least I can speak for OT professionals, that there's so many opportunities for OT professionals above and beyond traditional practice. And it's not necessarily starting your own private practice, because not everyone wants to start a private practice. Not everyone probably should start a private practice. But there's other things we can do besides traditional clinical roles. We just have to look for them. One of my first positions out of college, I just started as an OT right out of college where I did my field work, but an opening came up for a director of an early Head Start program. There wasn't OT in that job description by any means, but it looked interesting. It was in the town where I lived, so I could shorten my 45-minute commute, and I applied for it, and it was awesome. In fact, maybe I would still be there if we hadn't moved up here. So I think that instead of leaving the profession because people are burnt out and starting a practice might not be for you, think about all of these other positions out there that our background would be awesome for. So, there might be another position that fits you and that you're no longer burnt out in, and you don't have to deal with productivity or, some of the other stuff that is burning people out in like nursing homes, outpatient clinics, things like that.
I think in our state, it's really cool to see how many OTs have shifted. So our long-term care president is an occupational therapist. We have occupational therapists who are now working as care coordinators for our home and community-based services. So they're taking in clients and doing backgrounds and all sorts of checks that way. And so I think, Kara nailed it. Like, you can still apply. We have an OT that was my student. She's now running, I don't know, is it HOSA? Is that what it's called? Health, and it's through Mayville State in our state.
Oh, really?
Yep. So.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about, but I don't know what the
So
abbreviation is.
Yeah. So she's an OT who left traditional, actually, nursing home care and went in, and now she helps set up events for students who want to go into healthcare. So I think there are so many options out there. I think sometimes we pigeonhole ourselves into thinking it is only clinical practice as well. That we can't do. We have people in this program that also, like Prophet, Alex and them were PTs, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so now they work with practitioners and other things in a different facet. So I think, like Kara said, you don't have to leave the profession. You can just morph. And for PT, OT, speech, all of them, they do come with a wide variety of skill sets that really can lend you to other opportunities.
So Alicia, you've created products. There's other things you can do and create. So what kind of, can you talk a little bit about, because you've done a book and a product, right?
Yeah. I wouldn't say writing a book is lucrative and something that's going to give you any money, but it's a way to lead to something else. Because that little $4 I get once in a while from Amazon doesn't mean anything. But I created a product, but again, it's like very expensive to get it started. It's not something you can expect to get to pay for itself very quickly, because products cost money. But that is definitely something that's completely using my skills. It's getting my skills and knowledge are all being addressed in making the product and the end products that are following it. So, I'm expecting to make it a pretty big business, but it is kind of slow growth. But it's very rewarding, and it's a completely different way of looking at what we do, what I'm doing with my time. And sometimes, I've been a therapist for 26 years, so it's kind of fun to do something different and look at things a little bit different way. So,
and share what your product is so people can go check it out.
It's called The Stress Detective is the business, and I've got something called Clue Cards that has kids interview kids to say what stresses them out. So they sort cards based on how much of a problem things are, and there's pictures on one side and words on the other, and so they you just learn a lot I learn a lot, because if you ask a kid what stresses them out, unless they have like a very specific fear, like of bees or something, you're not usually going to learn all the things you need to know. So it's a really great way to get some information to be more helpful. And yeah, it's thestressdetective.com.
Awesome. And then Megan
Nice.
and I also have dove, not necessarily a proper word, but we both do things on the travel side of things. So I
Sure.
became a travel agent about 3 years ago. And there's so many different things we can do with that. I mostly use it to plan travel for my family and friends. Just did a 19-day multi-generational trip through Europe, and able to use a lot of resources that made that a lot easier, and can be financially advantageous as well. But Megan, you do that, and then we also, I think all of us do additional consulting. So therapists out there might be able to do consulting. I consult with a university with a different grant. So there's other different options of things that therapists can do to make additional money on the side. I guess I would caution, you see a lot of people marketing like online businesses and so forth, and sometimes they make it look really simple and easy, and it's still a lot of work. So I'd be cautious about that.
Yeah, I'll just say I've helped a lot of people, especially on the digital side, who have ambitions for different things that they want to do that are either against the grain, right? Or they're unique in their field. And a lot of times they go into it thinking they're going to, they run numbers, right? If I can just do this and this, I'll make this, and then I can stop doing that. And you're kind of putting the cart before the horse a lot of times, because what are you going to do? And this is kind of what I have to do is ask people those hard questions. What are you going to do if nobody is interested? What are you going to do if it doesn't work? Right? Are you going to be so disappointed that you don't think it's a good idea and you throw it away? Are you going to keep going at it? Are you going to drop prices? Are you going to try to make it free? A lot of times you're trying to pioneer something, right? You're trying to go out there and build something that people can't normally get, right? Whether it's educational, consulting, they're not familiar what $100 or $200 or $300 buying this thing really gets them. So you have to realize that sometimes by doing this, it's going to be a lot harder than just calculating some numbers. You might be doing it for free for a while in some cases, if it's possible to do so, or very cheaply. And it's going to feel like this is more work than I wanted it to be. And you have to be okay with that. Right?
If they even find you in the first place. Like, I think people assume that I have a website, they're going to just find me. And so
there's that too.
My brother started a business after he left the government job, and he is and he actually does like career coaching kind of stuff, so people can find like what kind of positions to move into. And I'm just like, don't think that when you launch you're going to suddenly have clients, and you have to be able to be persistent if you really want to keep this going. And it's really easy to be really gung-ho, put everything out there at the beginning, and then it's like people don't even know to look you up. Like nobody knows that exists. So
sometimes all that to say, there's a lot of great opportunity for you out there. It's not like you can't go out and do something.
Right.
We're not saying you have to go out there and just go see more patients because all the things are there, and sorry, there's no opportunities for you. Just come in there sometimes with less expectation on yourself, right? And approach it in a way that you realize that this is probably going to be more work, but you're in it for the long haul, and you're willing to adjust and pivot to make it successful. Some people give up, right? It's like that picture of two guys mining the rock, and one has gone so far and hit nothing, and the other one barely goes through and hits all the gold and diamonds, right? And it's kind of like, sometimes you don't get to pick which one of those you are. You just have to keep going until you strike it and find what works.
I like what Megan or Alicia just said with the website, because I was literally talking with someone starting their own business, and he was literally kind of talking about how the website goes, or has been waiting to release the website, because when those clients come, and I'm like, I wanted to say, unfortunately, that's not how it works. Once you turn on your website, doesn't automatically mean clients are going to start flocking to you.
Or even your
Not
Facebook page or
Yeah.
anything. Because I just
Google,
saw several people like start businesses. And to be honest, you search it online and it pulls up like a rental company and it pulls up and that's almost typing in a full name. So I think it's exciting to see a website on paper, like on your screen, but it doesn't equate to business whatsoever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Only if you're somehow in an area where you're the only therapist in maybe 100-mile radius, which I don't think that's really possible. And if it is, well, there might be other issues there beyond that. But no, yeah, your websites are a dime a dozen.
Mm-hmm.
They're important for you to have a presence, but they're not just like a magical pillar of light into the sky sending people to you, right?
100%.
Awesome. Well, I think that wraps it up for us today.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. And again, if you have additional questions that you would like us to address on our podcast, send them over. You can send them to admin@nextlevelot.com. Reach out to me directly at kara@nextlevelot.com. Check out our website. Be sure you join our Facebook at Next Level OT PTSLP, or follow us on Instagram. We'd appreciate that. So let's go out and inspire OTs, PTs, and SLP professionals to think above and beyond traditional practice. A lot of things out